Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Coffee with Cliff. I'm your host, Cliff Duvenois. This is episode 7. These are the stories that chronicle my journey to get better, 1% better every single day across the various areas of mind, body, business, and relationship. Today's story is called That Childhood Fantasy. Over 50 people are staring at me. The cameraman, Dan, signals that he's ready. And then the director looks right at me. Action. My body starts to move. It's official. I'm now acting in a feature film, fulfilling a childhood fantasy. All I could think to myself was that this has got to be one of the coolest things I've ever done. I hope my scene doesn't wind up on the cutting room floor. Making a movie. This is something that I remember as a 10-year-old kid that I would fantasize about. I was more interested in watching the making of Star Wars than I was actually watching Star Wars. As the years ticked by, my interest in movie making actually waned, but the love of story always stayed with me. That was until a few years ago. An opportunity popped up in my inbox. A producer friend of mine, Mark, sent out an email and he was asking for people to work on his film called Driver X. It would require a week-long commitment, 5 days. I'd probably work 10, 12, 14 hours a day. This would be a completely alien environment to me because I've never worked on a film before, just office environments or on my own. But that 10-year-old child inside of me, the one who hungered for that taste of movie magic, wrote Mark back and said, yes, I would like to help. Now, Driver X is a story about a man named Leonard. He's an older Gen Xer who was forced to close down his record store. He becomes a stay-at-home dad, but his family needs money. So he joins the gig economy, becoming a driver for Driver X, kind of like Lyft or Uber. Leonard is played by veteran actor Patrick Fabian. Now, Patrick is currently playing a role on the TV show called Better Call Saul. So he's a somebody. Before I knew it, the first day of shooting began, and I was working on the movie set, having a great time. One day, as I walked across set, I made eye contact with the director, Henry. He and the producer, Mark, discussed something in hushed tones. Then Henry motioned me over. "We need you in the next scene," Henry said, as he pushed up his glasses. I stood there for a second, not quite registering what he had just said. I shook my head. I'm sorry, you want me to act in your movie? Yes. Sweet Moses. I have never acted in anything before, but now he wants me to act in a movie on a silver screen? Shortly thereafter, Henry was walking me through my scene with Patrick. So if I didn't have enough pressure already, I'm now playing a scene with a veteran actor, a professional, someone who has been in countless TV shows, numerous movies. Me? My acting experience was playing sheep number 3 in the church play. So I took my place on the sidewalk. Dozens of people were watching me. The camera operator, Dan, made sure that his camera was working properly. He yells out, "Camera speed." And that's when Henry looked at me and yelled, "Action." Now, you would think that walking down the sidewalk and trying to look shocked would be absolutely easy, but it was suddenly the hardest thing that I had ever done in my life. After a few minutes, "Cut," Henry yelled. "Let's do it again." Henry looks at me and says, "Make your eyes really big, like this is the weirdest thing that you've ever seen in your life." Okay, I assume my spot. Henry looks at me. Action. Once again, I plod down the street, and on cue, I turn to look at Leonard. My eyes are as big as I can possibly make them. My mouth falls open. I'm thinking to myself, please don't trip. Keep walking forward. Keep looking shocked. Hopefully a fly doesn't land on my eye. "Cut," Henry yells. "Let's move on." I had no doubt that my clumsy acting skills killed the scene, but the possibility about me being on the silver screen had me absolutely juiced. I could smell an Oscar in the air, as long as I didn't wind up on the cutting room floor. Fast forward a few years, I got an email from Mark. Driver X was released and playing in cinemas. Now, the closest cinema to me that was playing the movie was in Santa Monica, and it was a Sunday. I figured, what the heck? As I drove up there, my mind wandered back to that scene, and I wondered, did it make it into the movie? Because I know when you shoot a film, editing is where the real story is told. If they decided to change something to make the story flow better or to feel better, would my big scene be cut from the film? Well, I had to know. An hour later, my butt plopped down into the recliner seat of the small theater. I thought for sure I would probably be the only person there since it's a small independent film. But in short order, over 100 people took their seats in the theater with me. The lights dimmed and the movie started. And in short order, I was swept into the world of Leonard. And as he started driving for Driver X and through conversations with complete and total strangers, we learned more about Leonard's hopes and dreams. And there's one particular scene where I hung on Leonard's every word as he described what it was like to be present at the birth of his daughter. How it was such a magical, almost religious experience for him. Patrick Fabian truly shined in that scene. Not too long after the movie ended, the audience, we cheered, we clapped. Both Mark and Henry were present. Patrick Fabian was there along with the cameraman Dan. They answered questions from the audience. What was the inspiration for this film? And how did you shoot that particular scene? And what were you thinking when you acted? That night on the way home, my car flew down the 405. My mind continued to wander over the film. I was both happy and proud that I could be of something that was so special. I was there in the beginning, and I got to see it finished. So, did my big scene wind up on the cutting room floor? Well, if you happen to be watching Driver X, and you just happen to notice in the first 10 minutes of the film, some tall, lanky dude with a pot belly that looks at the main character, Leonard, with a look of shock and disgust, his eyes as big as saucers. That would be the 10-year-old kid who finally got to fulfill his childhood fantasy. This has been Coffee with Cliff. Thank you for listening.